Hi, everybody. Um, Today, we're going to talk about some common issues that occur in play therapy and how you can sort of navigate those and manage those issues. So, okay, so we'll start here at the beginning. All right, so this is titled Typical Problems in Play Therapy. What to do if. So, what do you do if the child doesn't talk? Um, So this can be an uncomfortable situation for a lot of play therapists because they feel uncomfortable, they feel anxious, they don't necessarily know what to do. But the biggest thing is you can always track their play and their behavior, so they don't necessarily need to talk to make progress. You need to reevaluate your beliefs about the child and know that the child is always communicating through play, whether or not the child is speaking, and acceptance is not conditional. There is no if. So we want to accept the child completely for who they are and where they are, whether they're talking or not. So here's an example. So Michael sat in the sandbox methodically spooning sand on his shoes. The therapist says, "You're putting lots of sand right on top of your shoes." Michael, no response, does not look up, continues to spoon sand and concentrate on completely covering one shoe. The therapist says, "There, you got that one completely covered up. That one can't be seen." Michael shifts activity to carefully spooning sand on top of his left hand, which is resting on the side of the sandbox, spills a little sand on the floor and glances at the therapist. "Looks like you're wondering what I might think about your spilling sand on the floor. Sometimes accidents happen in here." Michael returns to covering his shoe with sand and completes the task. Now they're both covered up and can't be seen. Michael whispers, "Nobody likes them, so they're hiding." So as you can see here, Michael doesn't speak through the entire example except for one thing at the end, when he starts to feel a little bit more comfortable. And the therapist still has plenty to talk about. And as you can see, there's a lot of emotional work going on here, even though the child's not speaking. So that's what we want to remember. What to do if the child wants to bring toys or food into the playroom. So the general rule is not to allow food into the playroom, and not to allow toys that would not be typically found in the playroom. Sorry, that's a little off there. So it's okay to bring a toy, particularly if it's the first couple sessions, to help the child feel more comfortable. We do want to stay away, though, from books, puzzles, games, or like mechanical toys, drones, remote control cars, because they don't facilitate connection. So if they want to bring a teddy bear or some sort of comfort item for the first couple sessions, that's okay. Or even a toy that could facilitate expression or communication, because you can use that as a way to connect at first. But we don't want to allow, remote control cars and things like that, or iPads or iPhones or anything like that in the playroom. In responding to a forbidden item, the therapist should be sensitive to the child's feelings. So say something like, "I know you'd like to take that game with you into the playground, but it's for staying here in the waiting room. It'll be here when you come back from the playroom." The therapist is then responsible for helping the child to remember 45 minutes later that the item's in the waiting room. Likewise, children are prone to forget they brought a special item into the playroom, so the therapist will need to remember that at the end of the session as well. And you want to stay away from food in the playroom, have them finish their snack outside the playroom, because that can take away from the relationship. And it can make a mess. So what do we do if a child is overly dependent? Many children who are referred for play therapy have learned to depend on adults for getting their needs met. Parents and caregivers are notorious for doing things for children, thus fostering dependency and affecting children's feelings of competence and responsibility. So it's possible that the child may start in a very overly dependent way, and that's okay. We just want to use our facilitative responsives to return responsibility to the children and facilitate self-reliance. So you have to allow them to struggle with their decision making by not answering questions, not opening things that are easy for them to open. You're not going to grab things for the child if they ask you. You don't want to indulge the children's question of what to draw with an answer, or make decisions for the child about what to play and how. So you would say things like, "In here you get to decide," or "Seems like you're trying to decide what you want to draw. In here you get to choose. You would like me to make that decision for you, but in here you get to choose." Things like that. And you say it in a kind way to help put the responsibility back on them. If a child isn't allowed to struggle with making their own choices, how can they trust their own judgment and intuition in the future? I think this is what's so powerful about allowing children to make decisions and grow their confidence intrinsically. If they feel competent and they can trust their ability to make decisions, then they will do so throughout their life and have that autonomy and independence to succeed and follow their dreams. And if an adult does not believe in their ability to set their own course, how can they believe that they have the ability to do so? So we have to believe in the ability for children to thrive and be autonomous and be responsible and make decisions so that they feel empowered later to make decisions for themselves and it also helps build their self-esteem and self-confidence. So for example, a child says, "Get those scissors for me." Therapist says, "You'd like to have the scissors, but if you want to have the scissors, you can get them." And Melanie says, "When I play, do you want me to put the toys back where they are or just leave them out?" Therapist, "That's something you can decide." Will, "Is this a cat or a tiger?" Therapist, "It can be whatever you want it to be." Judy, "What do you want me to play?" In here, you can decide what to play. And Roberto, without attempting, "Will you stack these blocks for me?" Therapist, "That's something you can do." So anything that we feel like is something that they can do, we want to encourage them to do it. What to do if a child is seeking praise. We've talked about how praise comments are not appropriate in the playroom because it can cause over-dependence and it takes away from self-esteem that's being built intrinsically. So if we have a child that's seeking praise, it restricts their freedom as well and fosters external motivation instead of internal motivation. So if the child says, "Oh, just tell me, what do you think?" or they ask you over and over, you can provide a non-evaluative, detail-oriented response to their picture. So for example, if Martin shows the therapist a picture he's painted and says, "Do you think my picture of a house is pretty?" The therapist will point to the picture and say, "You painted a red house there, and you put 3 windows right there, and oh, you made this whole top blue all the way across there, and I see you painted a whole bunch of orange in this corner." So you're using that positive tone of voice, and you're looking and you're being interested. You're not saying, "I'm not going to tell you," or clamming up or anything like that, but you're just sort of not answering whether or not you like the picture, but you are pointing out the work that they did in a detail-oriented way. Jimmy, "See what I'm doing? You're playing with the clay. What should I make?" "You may choose to make whatever you wish." "All right, I'll make a hippopotamus." "You've decided to make a hippopotamus." Shapes the clay with much care and holds up a form that somewhat resembles an animal. "What is it? Do you like it?" "Ooh, you worked hard on that. It can be whatever you want it to be." And you say that because once into actual construction or shaping of an object, children sometimes change their mind about what they've created. So we want to make sure we're not calling it a hippopotamus because maybe they decided to make an elephant instead. Jimmy says, "But do you like it? Do you think it's good?" And the therapist says, "What is important is how you feel about it." You could also say, "You're wondering how I feel about it. I wonder how you feel about it." Or you're wondering how I feel about that. What's important is how you feel about that. What to do if a child says you talk weird? So, this is a very different relationship. And obviously I've been, teaching you and training you how to use very specific responses to children that are a little different than how adults react to children just in the regular world. Because the therapist is different because they don't give directions, provide judgment or praise, etc. The therapist also provides reflections and tracking statements So if they lack meaning, then they might feel parroted or irritated. But either way, if the child picks up the different communication style, they might say, "You talk funny." If so, you can reflect the feeling, or say, "Yeah, you've noticed our time is different from the other time you spend with adults. That may seem a little weird or funny." You can also state, "You don't like the way I talk," if they're irritated or they're saying it as a put down, because that way you can reflect feelings. Or you could just say, "Oh, so I sound different than other people to you." You could also say something like, "Our special playtime is a little different from time with other adults." Something like that. Matter of fact, concise. What if a child asks for affection? So the therapist always hopes that her genuine caring for and prizing for the child will be received and felt by the child. Some children, though, may need more concrete verification and may ask, "Do you like me?" or "Do you love me?" At such moments, the therapist needs to be warm, caring, and personally responsive because the child's feelings of self-esteem are vulnerable. If the therapist really does care for and values the child, expressing that would be appropriate. In our society, words like and love are tossed around very frequently, often with little meaning or significance. Therefore, in responding to the child, the therapist may want to convey her feelings with, "You're special to me, and this is a special time together." The same response would be appropriate if the child asked, "Do you love me?" What if the child wants to hug or sit in the therapist's lap? So we want to be really, really, really careful about physical touch. A hug is probably okay, but sitting in laps is pushing it a little too far. We want to be mindful of our child protection policies and the motivations of the child. If the child has experienced inappropriate touch or some sort of sexual abuse, then they might not have clear boundaries around that, and it's therapeutic to be able to set those in a compassionate way with the child. So you would say something like, "I know that's fun for you, but I know you like me without sitting in my lap." And the child might not understand appropriate physical boundaries. So as I mentioned, so you would say, "I know that's fun for you, but oh, okay, we already have that repeated." So it might be that they just have boundary issues. It might be that they're just young and they haven't really learned those boundaries yet. And it might be that they have been taught some inappropriate boundaries. But another reason might be that they are acting out regressive behavior, like wanting to cuddle and suck a bottle. And you could say something like, and that's okay behavior, that's what the playroom is for, but you would just want to say, "I know you want to pretend to be a baby and suck on the bottle. You can do that in the baby bed there." Or you could point to a beanbag or something like that so that they're not laying in your lap. What to do if a child steals a toy? You would say, "I know you'd like to take that car with you, but the car in your pocket stays here, so it will be here to play with next time." So there you're therapeutically setting a limit. You're not judging the child. You're not calling them out. You're not asking a question. You're just saying, "I know you'd like to take that car with you," because that's a reflecting feeling, "but the car in your pocket stays here, so it will be here for you next time." Let's say Justin says, "What car? I don't have any car." You would like to pretend you don't know where the car is, but the car is in that pocket, stays in the room. Justin puts his hand on the pocket and retrieves the car. So be straightforward, understanding, and firm. Don't ask questions that can be confusing or judge the child. So you're not going to say like, "Is there something you're forgetting?" or "Are you sure you don't have the car?" You're just going to say, "The car that's in that other pocket needs to stay here." What to do if the child refuses to leave the playroom? So you would say, "Our time in the playroom is up today." And at that point, the therapist stands up, walks to the door, and opens the door and holds it and waits. And of course, you've already given your 5-minute warning and your 1-minute warning so that they are prepared. And then you say, "It's time to go to the waiting room where your mother is." And Jessica says, "But I haven't played in the sandbox yet." She runs over and begins to play in the sand. You would like to stay longer and play in the sand, But Jessica, time is up for today. And you can take 2 steps toward the door while looking at Jessica. Jessica smiles. This is neat stuff. Can I just stay a little longer? Begins to pour sand through the funnel. Therapist walks even closer to the door. That's really a lot of fun for you, but it's time to leave. You don't like me. You really liked me. You'd let me stay. Oh, so you think if I liked you, I would let you stay. I know you really want to stay longer, but it's time to leave the playroom. At this point, I would, open the door, hold the door open. Jessica sees the therapist holding the door. I'm almost through. Just 1 more minute. Jessica, I know you want to stay for as long as you decide, but time is up. Jessica slowly stands up and and walks toward the door. So it may take some patience in repeating the expectation, but usually if you just set a very firm boundary or limit there and you walk towards the door and you hold it out open, they will go ahead and comply with that. So you have to be patient and calm. Having that attitude is really important so they don't feel judged and you don't get into a power battle. That last exchange in Gary Landreth's experience took about 4 minutes. So it may feel a little longer than that, but typically it doesn't take longer than a couple minutes. With a firm and calm limit set, most children will follow. Feeling the pressure can make the situation less comfortable for the therapist, but with patience, the interaction will work itself out. And I guarantee I've been in this situation. I've done a lot of play therapy with kids, and if you are very patient and you just keep repeating the limit and you stand by the door with the door open, they will come around. What to do if you have to unexpectedly not keep an appointment. So you want to let the child know and have consideration for the child. So if you know in advance, you're going to want to tell the child in the previous session that you're going to be out the next week, but that they can come back in 2 weeks to the playroom, and call the child if it is not possible to tell them in person. All right, that's all I have for the problems you might encounter in the playroom. And we will move on to chapter 13 soon. All right, thanks. Bye.